Good morning, everybody. Góðan daginn. Welcome to this meeting that we will have here today, webinar. Today we will talk about folio feeding, Blaðnæring, which is a very interesting topic, overlooked by many. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Pius.
Oh, we already started? Great.
Yes.
Hey, hang on.
So our objectives are to educate people on sustainable growing methods. We'll do that for all kinds of growers, organic and traditional growers. Then we are presenting some organic fertilizers. Today we will talk about folio feeding. We will introduce 4 products for that. We will have some discussion. Talk about the next webinar. This webinar is recorded and it is conducted in English, but you can ask questions in Icelandic. So, Pius, tell us about folio feeding, please.
Thank you, and thank you for being present again. This is number 7 of the webinars, I believe, and I look forward to the next half hour. And I hope I can inspire you in your work and in the way you think about plants. Because our statement is foliar feeding is totally natural. And I mean totally natural. I've seen this, I have experienced it already long time ago in rainforests, where I was wondering, how can plants grow in almost dark? And look at most of our plants, including the plants that you have in the house. They mostly come from forested regions, and I will talk about this. But first we have to say something about what plants actually do, because many times we say, yeah, you need healthy soil to have healthy plants. But actually, it's the other way around. You need healthy plants to make a soil a healthy soil. How else would it ever be possible that from pure lava, which is hot in the beginning and then cools down, but it's still lava, how is it possible that plants start growing on it? It's not because of the lava. It's because of the plants. And the plants, they make lava into a soil or any other form of rocks. So it's not only the frost and the winter and the water, it's also the plants that help in chemically and mechanically creating soil. That's why I want to focus on what plants do. Well, plants, they catch sunlight, and the sunlight is put into energy. But it is energy, it's put into carbon. So what did they use it for? They use it for their daily expenses, like us. We have daily expenses. We want to save some money, and plants do too. They put some savings in the bank. And of course, we all pay taxes, and plants pay taxes too. So all about 30 to 35% in average of all the sugar production in a plant goes through the roots straight into the soil. Why is that important? Well, plants make sugars. These sugars can be simple or they can be complex. A simple sugar, and this is what we know so far in plant science, simple sugars basically attract simple organisms or pathogens, disease-causing organisms. Complex sugars made by healthy plants, they attract the right type of symbiotic partners, mycorrhizae, bacteria, all kinds of fungi. And they all have a function. These plant root exudates, they are plant growth promoting. That means they put energy in the soil. The low sugars, they attract the pathogens, and the plant roots need some of that energy back as well. And it's all about the root hairs here. The root hairs that basically produce the exudates. They drip literally, and you can see here little driplets of sugars on the outside of the root hairs is given to the soil, given to do something with it. And what do plants do with these complex sugars? And the higher the complexity of the sugars, the better the plant, the better the soil, the better the absorption. So it's a cycle. And I've said this before, we never look at what we call the bulk soil microbiome, because it changes where you walk. So you cannot do any scientific expression on that until now. So where we talk about are these: the rhizosphere soil and the root-associated microbiome. These are the groups that are really relevant for the production of soil. And of course, plants have a defense system. The higher the quality of the exudates, the better the production of defense chemicals, the better the plant is able to defend itself, the easier it is in growing. So these are all relevant issues when it comes to foliar feeding, because this is what you can see, excuse me, in specific pictures, fairly old grass pictures already, but you can see the exudates from the roots without mycorrhiza and the exudates from roots with the mycorrhizae. How does that work? Well, the mycorrhizae, the fungi, are able to absorb a lot more minerals, trace elements, and maybe elements where you've never heard about when it comes to fertilizing, like lanthanum and cerium and germanium, and all these chemicals that we don't know enough about yet. But they're somehow absorbed by the fungi, transported into the plant, combined to sugars, and given back to the soil for 35%. And if you have more exudates, that means you have more photosynthesis. You have more exudates and complex exudates if you have a healthy photosynthesis. But plants only make 25% photosynthesis. What do they do with the rest of their leaves? Why do they only make 25% photosynthesis? Like I said, foliar feeding is totally natural. And look where most plants come from. They come from the rainforest, from origin. And you have all kinds of layers that makes it dark in the forest. And I apologize for this, but most of our plants are from the understory layer. Even the fruit trees are from understories. The shrubs, the herbs, they all come from underlayers. But from the top, not only very little light comes down, as you can see on the right picture below, and trees will never grow into each other. They don't do that. It's not in their nature. But there's always some light coming through, but not nearly enough to produce a full active photosynthesis. So what happens from these levels, lots of humic acids, amino acids, bird droppings, etc. It all drops down on the understory. And plants actually work with that. Because if you look at the floor of rainforests, and it doesn't really matter where you are, the leaves are never clean. They grow full with mosses and lichen and even very small plants, epiphytes, very, very small. So these leaves, they hardly function for photosynthesis, but these plants in the very low stories of a forest soil, you can imagine how much root competition there is as well. So they have divided their energy levels, some for the roots, most for water and mineral uptake, but for the other natural components and the organic components, plants really depend on their leaves. And that's contrary to the science that we have nowadays. We have in our scientific, sorry, my agenda is pestering me. Nowadays, we say plants have roots for absorption of water and minerals. Well, that's no longer correct. We now discover that the leaves are really important in that. And we have been doing trials, scientific trials within our company for many, many years already. And every time it's proven to be effective. Why? Because we know how this works in plants. Even the leaves, no matter how simple they look, they're very, very, very well developed organs from the plant. And these organs have a multifunctional aspect. They're not only for one thing. It's just like the roots. They're not only for absorption, they're also for anchoring, also for storage, also for savings. So every part of the plant has multiple functions. So what we did, contrary to what many people said, no, plants absorb through the roots. We said, no, plants absorb through the cells of the leaves as well. That's why we made this microscopic picture where you can see the organic plant feed. The organic plant feed was colored with a ink, and we sprayed it on plants, and then we cut the leaves, and this is what you see. You can actually see the stomata free of the blue dye. And why is that? Because stomata are not for absorption of water and minerals. A lot of literature says that the stomata in the leaves will be used for entering a foliar feeding. That's not true. It would be the same as drinking through your lungs. You only do that once. You cannot do that. Stomata are for breathing, not for drinking. But you can see the fertilizer was spread through the leaf. How is that done? That's done through a principle. It's called endocytosis. Endocytosis means that the cells basically envelope the molecules and drag them inside the plant. That's how it's done. So you have that in 3 variations. We use all 3 in our practice. And we talk about the natural green and bacteria. They are entered through phagocytosis. Then the liquids, like our organic plant feed, it's called like in pinocytosis. You can look back. And the receptor-mediated endocytosis is done with signal proteins. We don't talk about it today, but signal proteins are becoming really relevant in agriculture in all over Europe. We have products for it. It's called the harpin protein, but we'll come back to that later. So basically, foliar feeding works the same as a nicotine plaster on your skin. If you want to quit smoking, you have these helping products that provide you with the nicotine without the cigarettes. So it works in principle the same with people, animals, and plants. Then amino acids. Amino acids are really, really important biological compounds. And they form the base of every biological molecule. They're basically, you can call them the bricks of every cell. Now, you have all kinds of amino acids. Most amino acids on the market are made from animal leather, collagen. And these amino acids are derived from washing the leather, etc. It's a cheap product, but you can make a very quick distinction between plant-based and leather-based or animal-based amino acids by the presence of two of these, hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine. These two, they can have an inhibiting function on plant growth. And they are not present in plant-based amino acids. That's why we as a company, a long time ago, we choose to serve our customers only with plant-based products. And not only for that reason, but we don't really like to take part in this practice where amino acids are derived from hides after skin preparing. Well, these amino acids are very important in building as building blocks in plant growth. And we have seen that foliar feeding with amino acids really works, because what you can use this graph for basically all kinds of plants. But what it says, and maybe we go too deep into the matter, but we talk about Brix values. Brix values is, it says something about the elements in the plant. It says something about the resistance. It says something about the resistance in a plant. If you have a high Brix value, then the plant basically won't get sick anymore. So what we see after one-time foliar feeding, you get a spike within a few hours, and then in the days after that, the spikes go down. But the Brix level will be, the bottom level will be slightly higher. And we discovered that. That's why we continued these leaf fertilizing or foliar feeding practices. And then we sprayed again and we saw the same. You get a spike in a few hours, and then days later, it will go down again. But the bottom line was still every time a little bit higher, even when we didn't give the weekly, but the bi-weekly, and later on 3-weekly foliar feeding. We could still see that the bottom level of the Brix value went up. And we've seen that many times and in most plants. So if you start with the procedure of foliar feeding, don't do it once. Continue that. With a field sprayer, you can spray your vegetables, your crop, corn, grasses, it doesn't really matter. All green plants are receptive, very receptive to foliar feeding. This is a little more complex, but I don't want you to get worried. I keep it very short. These are calcium channels. And these calcium channels, also on the right, they determine, the calcium, and I cannot say enough about it, calcium is really, really important in helping the plant to activate the defense systems. And if you, hang on, if you see here the calcium channel, and you see that calcium is really relevant to activate, to switch on defense genes. So the plant is able to make jasmonic acid, benzoic, phenolic acids, and silicic acid, etc. They're all defense chemicals, and they depend on calcium. So giving extra calcium in a form that can be absorbed by plants is really easy. That's why we came with natural green. It's a simple product. It's 100% calcium carbonate, and it's micronized. That means the largest particle is 4 micron, and that's bacteria size. And that bacteria size is able to go through the calcium channels. Especially when you use kalium, a lot of kalium, or if you wish potassium, if you use that a lot, then the pressure on the cells, the pressure on the individual cells will be so big that the calcium channels are squeezed and closed. And that makes it difficult for plants to defend themselves. And we can see that in practice. If you give too much kalium, the plants are very susceptible to mildew, to insects, because there's not coming enough calcium into the cells, disabling the plant to produce the defense chemicals. So by all means, natural green is not a pesticide. It's not against diseases. It's feeding the plant to enable the plant to resist to pathogens. And you can make that more common. It also goes for the plant feed, organic plant feed, OPF. It contains the amino acids, contains more than 30 elements. Everything comes from the plant and goes back to the plant. And then fulvic. Fulvic is a child of me. I'm so happy with this product because it's the only and really only natural chelating agent. It helps plants to reach for elements that are really hard to absorb. Take, for instance, phosphates. We all know there's a lot of phosphate in the soil, but most plants cannot reach that phosphate. Well, fulvic will help you, excuse me, fulvic will help you in this chelating action to make it available. Now, there are hundreds of products on the market with humic acids and fulvic acids. Most of them are derived from leonardite. Leonardite is a brown coal, or maybe even older than brown coal, and it contains humus. It's millions of years fossil plant debris. In order to make that liquid again, because it's basically stone, you have to dissolve it with KOH. That's very high pH. That will change into a liquid, more syrup. Then you have to acidify it with hydrochloric acid. That this process means that the kalium stays behind. That's why in the USA they call it potassium humate. It's many times produced in China and in the United States, and this potassium humate. But it's made from leonardite. It's not organic. It's not really functional because it needs so many chemical steps that it's not even a nice product anymore. So we made this comparison between fulvic and the traditional humic acids, and you can read this back, but these last two columns are really important. The pH of fulvic is 8 to 8.2. It's not an acid, basically, whereas traditional humic acids are really acid. But if you look at the cation exchange capacity, that means the exchange of elements in the soil is very high compared to the chemical ones. You make your own decision on this. Of course, we did all kinds of trials and external research. If you see what fulvic is here, the pH and a high percentage of fulvic, which is the only chelating part in all humic substances, is the fulvics that determine the chelating capacity of the product in the soil. That went, yes, within half an hour. I put some speed up to it, knowing that if you're really interested or you forgot something, then you can look back from the recording. But for now, I want to thank you for your attention. Very kind of you to spend your time on listening to this topic. And I will give you back to your turn now.
Thank you, Pius, for interesting presentation as always. Now it's the time for question and answers. You can type the questions in Icelandic in the chat box. If you like, the chat box is at the bottom of the screen. If you go with the mouse over it, you can unmute yourself and ask questions. So while people are thinking maybe 2 or 3 questions, when I was studying folio feeding, I saw that the people are talking about making a mist or some kind of mist, and it would be better that would come from behind, beneath the plant. But you say the other thing, it should come on top of the leaves.
Yeah, well, yes. Normally leaves are faced to catch as much light as possible. So spraying from the top means you spray on the top of the leaves, yes.
Yeah.
It's not a chemical. Chemicals you want all over on the leaves. So with chemicals you want air support, that the chemical will touch all parts of the leaves. It's not like this with foliar feeding.
Okay, there is a lot of text there. Do you see the chat box, Pius?
No. Because I'm screen sharing, I cannot see the chat box.
Ah, I see. While I'm reading this, maybe can you tell us about in what kind of agriculture folio feeding would be most suitable and what it's mostly used for? Is it potato or something else? Or?
Well, yes, we do have a lot of experience with sugar beets, with potatoes, but also with onion, leek, and of course nurseries, plant nurseries. And vegetable production is basically, that's where we started with the salads, but also tomato, sweet pepper, paprika. It's functional on really most plants.
Yeah. We have very good experience here in Iceland with OPF liquid in both in tree nurseries, in where they are producing summer flowers, and also with all kinds of vegetables and salads. So really good results here in Iceland.
Well, that's good advertising.
Yeah.
And you can share these results also with potential customers?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any more questions?
It's a really long one. Paris quadrifolia, which evidently one of the agripal MR types in its early life cycle, has a very one-sided relationship with MR partners similar to the non-phosphatical oocyte. How do you separate these effects out of our natural foliar feeding in low plants and seedlings?
I don't really understand the question.
No.
If I may, I would like to see that question translated, and I can mail my answer if you appreciate that.
Yeah, we will put it on our Facebook page, the answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I will mail this to
anyone, the one who asks these complex questions.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Happy for that. Okay, any more questions? Don't have any more questions. Okay,
then I will have a few following slides for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's already done?
Yeah. So upcoming webinars. We have one left, Pius. Trend in environmental legislations. You're going to share your experience on that.
That's the next one. That's on the 2nd of February. Mm-hmm. It's all about the new legislations for the EU. I don't know if it's relevant for Iceland, but within the EU, we will have a complete new fertilizer law, and there is a paragraph in it on biostimulants.
Yeah. Usually that will be reflected in Iceland. So I think it's interesting for people to get to know that. So, okay, next one. Our Facebook page, you can always look into that. And there you can see the recording of, or link to recordings of these webinars, link to our web YouTube channel. And the next couple of slides, Pius.
I have a question. Can you also put these links on your website of Vege?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
YouTube channel, continue. Our website. On the right-hand side, you see fræðsla education, and we put those links over there also.
Oh, this one here.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Next one. Your website, ton of resources there. For example, article on folio feeding, interesting one. So, okay, that's all for now. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Pius, again for amazing presentation.
Thank you, sir.
See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you all for listening, and have an enjoyable day.
Yeah.
The weather here in Holland is really sad and dark and rainy and very windy.
Okay. Enjoy your walk. Okay, thank you.
Enjoy your day.
Yeah,
thank you very much, all of you.
Bye-bye.